Welcome back to the AI Summit, Day 3, Bottom Funnel. I'm your host, Julia Nimchinsky, joined by my co-host, Justin Michael, and we're deeply grateful to all the amazing speakers, analysts, and sponsors who have played a critical role in making this summit possible. We'll kick off the first panel today with Hyoun Park, CEO and Principal Analyst at Amalgam Insights. Welcome, Hyoun.
Hi, well, pleasure to be here.
How's life? What's new?
Oh gosh, yeah, I've heard this thing called AI that is really taking up everybody's minds. Everybody seems to be an expert. Everybody seems to be really excited about this stuff.
Let's get into it. AI for negotiation.
Yes, so very excited to have this be hosting this panel on AI for negotiations. We've got several fantastic experts with us, people with practitioner experience, people who are building fantastic solutions that are AI related, people who are really involved in the sales enablement practice and supporting contract negotiations from all sides. Prior to getting started, I'd love to get some quick introductions of each of our panelists. So I'm going to start with Karen, just because that's the first one I see on my screen. Karen, if you could just give her a quick 10-15 second introduction.
Sure. I'm Karen Sage. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Locally. And essentially, we connect online to offline. And so very, very happy to be here.
Excellent. Next, Ori.
Hi, I'm Ori Zuckerman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Substrata. We analyze nonverbal cues to help deal makers become more nuanced, more attuned to subtleties that can make or break deals.
Very interesting. And Amanda.
Yeah, hi, I'm Amanda Kalo. I am the CEO and co-founder of OneMind, formerly the founder and former CEO of Sixth Sense. We are building superhuman AIs for go-to-market, a photoreal face, voice, and brain that can join a call, give a demo, give the pitch, do the thing, assist your team along the way, and also play the role of a BDR, a ride-along sales engineer, onboarding customer success, etc. So we are building superhuman go-to-market teammates.
Yes, and I got to meet Mindy earlier this week, so it's very interesting technology. Jen?
Hi, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Jen Tyndall, and I'm a VP of Strategic Insights with Grace Hill. We're in the multifamily and commercial real estate space and provide training, surveys, policies, a whole host of solutions for multifamily and commercial managers and owners.
Great. And Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Gottlieb. I'm an analyst at Gartner for sales. And so I cover sales tech and help our mid-sized, large enterprise clients across a wide range of industries make decisions about which sales technologies to put into their tech stacks.
Fantastic. And finally, Bryce.
I hope I don't look like I'm in a witness protection program because my view is not looking normal, guys. So I'll try to fix it, but let me be quick here. So I'm Bryce. I'm the CEO of Growth Era. We are a growth enablement services company. We work with B2B sales organizations from startup to enterprise. At the top of the funnel, we build pipeline through outbound sales development. And down the funnel, we help increase win rates through sales pipeline management and CRM optimization services.
Fantastic. And although you look like you're in the witness protection program, we will still be definitely keeping your inputs in mind.
If anyone has any advice, I'll take it, but I don't want to hold up the conversation. I don't know why it's doing this.
Okay. So in any case, I'm curious, just a kind of open-ended question as a starting point. How do you see AI helping with contract negotiations at the initial initial starting point, when you're thinking about how to structure the contract? Of course, B2B sales is quite complicated. B2C sales can have complex contracts as well. So where do you see AI helping in that initial starting point? I'll just point to Ori as a starting to start us off.
Well, I'm not sure the question was super clear to me, at least. Usually, as far as I know, a deal does not start from your strategy. It starts from, you may want to close a deal, but the engagement comes first, and what you're describing usually happens towards the middle or the more advanced stages of a deal. So, what exactly do you mean?
Sure. So when you get to the point where a contract starts becoming part of the sales process, where can AI help you with that?
So I think AI can help you a lot with the research part of it. So if you think about just the negotiation process and all the way from sort of figuring out like where you've been in the past, what positions you've taken, and the outcomes, it can do a large spectrum of that kind of analysis for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Curious. Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
No. You go ahead, Jen.
I would agree and say the same happens in the real estate space where AI can be used to identify what prices you should set your leases at, for example. So that research component really helps that negotiation go a lot smoother. So for example, if you think apartments, and I know that the lawsuit that the DOJ filed against RealPage has made a lot of news in my industry. And there's a lot of question marks around whether or not this AI can be used in this way for setting prices for multifamily rents. But as of right now, it's common practice. And it just helps make that conversation with the prospective resident a lot easier and smoother because there's so much other data on what other residents at comparable properties are willing to pay for a similarly priced unit. And AI just makes that conversation possible.
Yeah, it sounds like there's this real opportunity to use AI for to analyze historical data and be able to contextualize that within the focus of any individual deal to be able to move forward.
Yeah, I'll add just one piece to that. I think the real big thing and benefit that AI will give us today is we're used to looking at things in like a one-to-many fashion, where how can I do something at a broad stroke or for this ICP or this group. But what about the real benefit and the real advantage that AI is offering us is to do it in a one-to-one and do it in real time, and to supersede the capacity limitations of humans to understand what's happening. So imagine a world where you're on a call and the AI can actually read the body language and the tone and know everything about that company and that deal that you're selling to. We all as sellers, we can give our sellers all the information in the world and have the best battle card and all the best information. But if they can't pull it up in real time and use that in the conversation, then it's not going to be useful. So we can throw a bunch of information at humans, but humans have capacity limitations. But the AI can take all of that vast amount of information and help negotiate at the time, in the moment, in a one-to-one, very personal, relatable way, and to really bring empathy into the conversation to understand their buyer in a way humans can't today. And I think that we forget about like where it's really going to truly understand who we're talking to.
Interesting. So we've talked about a couple of different AI use cases, but maybe it would make sense to take a little step back and really kind of figure out what do we mean by AI? Because there's predictive AI where we look at specific forecasts. There's more this conversational AI where we're thinking about bots. There's this generative AI stuff that is more that is bringing all stuff out to us. And a couple of you at least are working with technologies that are even taking, I would say, a step further in being more engaging teammates, or in looking at emotional and kind of hidden layers of conversation associated with AI, so beyond conversational to like emotional AI. So when you think about AI for contracts and for sales, what are the technologies that we're really talking about here?
So I would I don't know, do you want to, okay. As far as I'm concerned, there are two. The first one is kind of well known. Everything has to do with LLM. Mostly we're looking at a huge category of conversation intelligence, not conversational AI, but conversation intelligence tools that record, transcribe, and then use LLM engines to make sense of what's going on. That's technology number one, and it keeps evolving. The second one, it's also part of what we do at Substrata, is called SSP. And maybe Amanda is dabbling in that as well, I'm not sure. SSP stands for social signal processing. And that essentially entails everything has to do with analyzing the nonverbal cues and patterns that have social meaning in the context of a deal or a conflict or a negotiation. Deal making and hostage negotiations are very similar in many senses. And actually, the bigger the deal, the more truth there is in the statement. So these are the two main technologies I see. Of course, AI is it's not even an official, it's machine learning, right? Within it, you have deep learning, but if we're talking about the clusters, I would say these are the two main clusters that have a lot of influence on what's going on in the course of a B2B deal. That would be it.
Great. I'm a little curious, Dan. Of course, Gartner has a lot of frameworks for technologies as well as sales enablement, and I'm wondering how that perspective fits into what you do, or how that fits into the inquiries that you take.
Yeah. So we've been the funny thing about sales tech leaders is sales buyers, they don't care. They don't care what kind of AI it is. They want to see the results. They want to see does it pass my eye test first? And that's been a really interesting finding for me as one of our AI leads in our Gartner for Sales practice, working with executive sales leaders in a wide range of industries. And but what's important, and this matters because it's leading to like poor decision making around AI. So I love your question. And one of the things that we're trying to educate our clients about is not just to back up what Ori was talking about. It's not about a large language model versus a predictive engine, right? Versus like emotional intelligence. We've been trying to guide them about this concept of composite AI, which is that there's combinations of AI techniques that are likely going to be that are being used already today to deliver a feature or to deliver a use case that is valuable to you. And so I think there are a lot of good examples of this already in market, in just the way that you think about the role that a AI sales assistant plays in taking a transcription, turning it into a summary, and creating a follow-up to do. There's already many different versions of AI in that particular workflow. So, that's something that we're the next generation of sales tech buying is going to be about helping business buyers better understand what kind of questions to ask to understand the value of someone's composite AI relative to their competitors that they're evaluating. And because right now, a lot of the demos are check out my prompt, look at my response. How dope is that, right? And I think there's so much happening beneath the surface here. And so I know that that's kind of like a more of a process way of answering your question, but I think it's important for this audience to kind of recognize that's what's going on. And I would say that more specifically, to directly answer your question, what makes right now large language models are a really intriguing tool for, in what my opinion is, the sweet spot combo of process and tech, which is the business case. The business case is the like top of the whatever, the snowball at the top of the avalanche in negotiation, and your ability to put together a really compelling business case can actually, a large language model can help you quite a bit with when it's coupled with a history, the engagement history from a deal, many of the different recorded conversations that you have throughout a deal, research from externally that's using things like point of view about what the earnings transcripts are telling you about what they care about, and using all of that as part of one writing process to put together a business case. If I was a sales leader looking at AI for negotiation, that would be my big bet right now.
Hey, Dan, can I follow on with what you just said there? I think there's a really key point of putting all that information together, but then how do we use that information? And so, you know, I look at the category of AI as there's two core categories. There's all the efficiency plays in the workflow, right? So everybody's like before the conversation, writing the right email, following up, summarizing after, you know, creating that, responding to the RFP, and that's all around the deal. But buying and selling happens in the conversation. So how do you take all of that information that you just said, like to have all the information about the deal, everything that's happening, and inject that at the place and point when a seller is making a decision? And so our thesis at OneMind is that it has to be a conversational piece and component where the AI is aiding and helping the buyer at that time. Because even the co-pilot, you can't turn over here. If you said something and I go to my co-pilot, like, oh my gosh, how do I research that and then bring it back? I can't bring it back in conversation and keep it going. And I think that's a huge difference for what a lot of these point solutions today that are all popping up everywhere are building these workflows and automation versus being directly in the conversation and moving it forward.
Yeah, Bryce, I know you had some thoughts.
Yeah. So I'll say we approach AI and really any tech with like a aggressive cautiousness might be a good way to put it, because there's just such a proliferation of tools, as we all know, out there, right? So what we try to do is draw it down to not forgetting about the fundamentals of what we're trying to achieve. So, you know, with the topic being negotiation today, you know, a successful negotiation to me is one where the negotiating part is largely irrelevant. We're trying to eliminate negotiation through execution up to the point where a negotiation at a contract could happen. And so one of the places that we're using AI that hasn't been mentioned yet, generative AI platform, is in training. So literally not a real-time co-pilot, although pretty real-time, that we're getting analysis we couldn't get before when we're training on bots that we built. It's a platform called Hyperbound that we're using. I know there's others out there as well. And it's really been extremely helpful to us because we can go back and we can see these points where we didn't maybe build the business case the way we could have. And so we created a problem for ourselves at the negotiation stage that we could have prevented had we executed better on the way to that point. And so for me, when people want to negotiate, this is a very generalized term, but it's usually because they're not clear or they're not confident. And so they're looking for some trade-off. It's usually not a nefarious, I want to hurt you as a partner, right? I want to get one over on you. It's usually because they have a root cause that they're trying to mitigate something that they're not confident in or clear on. So that's where I see so far the generative AI has been really helpful to us. And we'd love to find other ways to streamline that process as long as they align with the fundamentals at each stage that we're trying to execute. And that's where a big part of the challenge is, because there's so much lacquer in a lot of what you see on the top. It's how do you get down to what's really going to be useful.
Yes, Bryce, that clarity that you're talking about, of course, I think that's always a big goal in any sort of negotiation as you are trying to figure out who gets what. And we talk about the win-win, but from a practical perspective, there are a lot of stakeholders that come into play into many of these complex deals. And often the assumptions that are being made or the terms that people want to put into a contract aren't necessarily being explicitly stated. And I'm curious how AI might be used to help understand some of those hidden assumptions or some of those stakeholders that may not necessarily be the first person that you're talking to. Is AI helpful at this point in 2024 to be able to work with some of those challenges?
You know, I think that if you're talking about fixed dispositions, I think it's really hard to dig them out. With that, I would say there's a whole lot of knowledge, information that you can pull just based on the person's LinkedIn profile. right? And position and the company's size and standing in its industry. That's one. The other thing is a lot of information that can be pulled from behavior. When it comes to the intricacies of, the office politics, intra-group dynamics on the other end, there are some things that you can understand, but primarily I think you can infer what is the hierarchical structure between the people if you can't know it based on their official positions. But if you're talking about behind the scenes kind of other interests, it's very hard to dig them out.
I think we don't even use the information we have today, like from past conversations as humans. Like, if you think about what a rep is on 8 calls a day, right, trying to sell, and they're trying to remember who are they talking to in the last deal? Okay, I was talking to them 2 weeks ago. I'm bringing this information back up. They go to their Salesforce notes. They're trying to pull everything together. I think the place that AI can really help is to bring that information to light on the conversation in the conversation, right? So we don't have, as humans, our memories are very small, right? And limited. And so AI can just help us have that context that we already have our access to. We just can't pull it up and we can't use it. I think that's a really great place, like in the point of negotiation. I know when I'm on deals every day, I'm now, trying to founder-led sales, right? I'm out there on 10 calls a day selling, and I'm like, oh gosh, okay, I go to my AI summary notes, I go to the notes I wrote, like, what were their sticking points? And I barely have enough time to just like skim over them. But what if I had somebody there with me on the call and the AI could bring those points up? Oh, look, we last talked about this and you were concerned about ABC. So I can focus on the relationship and the AI can help me retrieve the information that's already there.
Yeah. Karen, you had some thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you're talking about is almost like, predictive before something happens, like downstream. And AI is actually, it's a chess problem, right? Like they can think several moves ahead. And to Amanda's point, they collect so much data in terms of sort of, things that you forget, that they're a great assistant to sort of sit there and help guide the conversation for you.
Yeah, I think of, for instance, with real estate, there are so many externalities that might affect a deal. Just how many grocery stores are there in a square mile, or what is the school system? All these things that are not 8,000 square feet. They are all these other things that affect your deal. And I'm curious from a practical perspective whether that comes up from an AI perspective at this point.
Sure, I can comment on that. There are some very interesting prop tech companies that are specifically working on that problem of gathering all of that data. And especially I have a colleague I really highly respect. He has a company called Origin by Altrio. And what they do is they extract data using OCR and some other image recognition from companies like CBRE, JLL, these brokerage firms that produce pamphlets about properties, including things like, are there grocery stores nearby and whatnot. And right now that information is distributed in PDF forms sent via email, and they mass distribute it. But gathering all of that data and putting it in a database so that owners and investors can actually use that to make strategic decisions about what properties to invest in, what markets are interesting at that point in time. That is something that companies like Origin are working to solve, and they do use AI in order to extract, normalize, and analyze that information. It is a huge opportunity within, not only they're focused on like commercial multifamily, but single family. I mean, the Zillows of the world, that's not really my world right now. But certainly I'd say single family is well ahead of the multifamily and commercial space in terms of using data like walk scores in order to identify properties that they want to buy and sell. I'm sure you're probably familiar with, like, Redfin was buying their own properties, Zillow bought their own properties for a while because they, again, had access to so much of that data that you referenced and could value properties themselves. So it's very cool to see what these firms are doing.
Sure. So
I know Bryce and Dan raised their hands too, so I jumped in. Excuse me.
No problem.
Go ahead.
I'm a rule follower. Okay, so I had a question, and this may be directed for Amanda. So I love the idea of assisting the salesperson in the process. And I also love the idea of doing that real time. Where I'm having a little bit of a disconnect is we're already overwhelmed with information, and we're trying to be in the moment with that prospective customer. And so from an execution standpoint, well, I'll make one other point. And then with AI, it's very powerful, but if we're wielding the tool the wrong way, it can backfire on us, right? So I'm picturing being on a sales call where let's call it our technical support rep on the call with us, and that's your AI, and they're in the conversation flow. Are there some pitfalls where we can, can we mute them?
Yeah.
We certainly don't want to argue with them. Or is it more of a reference stream that I'm trying to quickly get the cliff notes and make sure I'm on point? Because that could almost be distracting.
Yeah, that's distracting. That doesn't work, right? So we know that I call that the ride along, like the co-pilot, where you've got your chat over here and you're trying to get the information and then carry on a conversation. So I fundamentally believe that doesn't work. You can use those methods for before and after the conversation, but in the conversation, having an AI on the call. So just imagine here, in fact, she was going to join the call, but interestingly enough, the reason she's not on the call is she likes to share slides and do the thing, like give the demo. So I don't have her trained to be able to be on a panel yet. So we found a little glitch. So she wasn't able to be on the panel because I couldn't stop her from doing that. But imagine she's on my call and there's two modes. She can either be in active mode where she's leading. It's a one-on-one, she's on the website and she's leading the buyer down the journey. She's answering their questions, giving the pitch. The second mode is passive, where she's just waiting to be called upon. So she'd just be hanging out here and her wake up word is, "Hey, Mindy." And so if I said, "Hey, Mindy, answer the last question," she would jump in, answer the question, show the slide, do the thing. And you can always say, "Stop talking, Mindy." And you can Slack her behind the scenes, just like Bryce, if you and I were on a call together, I could Slack you and say, "Stop talking," or "Do this next." Like, I need you to bring up the slide. I need you to give this demo. You can back channel to her as well. So yeah, it's still in the control of the seller to control that conversation, focus on the relationship, but let her augment that conversation with the best technical knowledge, with doing, like, for negotiation, imagine her being able to give, like, for your value management, like, will you walk the buyer through the ROI and the value case? And she pulls up the Excel and she steps them through the value. And then the seller is just there to bring the relationship along, take the notes, make sure that it's going in the right direction. But she's doing the quote unquote hard work of the selling, if you want her to.
Yeah, I don't want to run too long, but if I can get a quick two-part on this. So when we're talking about negotiation, specifically, there's a cost of inaction that can help you from your side, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's an as compared to what, and that's what we usually see as common themes in negotiation. So, those are some of the harder things. I think that AEs, they, again, in the moment, they have an opportunity to say, what's the root cause of what you're really looking to try to solve? Or, as we talked about before, this was a top priority. But if you have more information that you can build your case upon quickly to go back and remind, then it usually can nullify negotiation. And I just had one today on our sales Slack where someone's asking for the first month free. I'm ready to go, but you've got to give it to me free. And the question in the channel was, why are they asking for this?
Right.
There's so much value provided during onboarding. Do we understand the root cause so we can address the root cause question? So I'm really interested to see if it could be an augmentation in that way.
Well, think about it. I always like to say it's asking the hard questions your sellers aren't doing, just like you're saying, right? They're not asking why, because they're afraid. There's like a human fear and they just want to appease the buyer. They don't want to lose the deal. But if the AI comes in, is in the call and say, "Oh, can you help me understand why you need that month free?" Or what's the root, going back to when we talked about this before. So the AI can be used as like the bad guy, if you will, and let the seller be the good guy along and not have to, because we find that sellers, best of intentions, but there's a fear factor and there's a human element where they don't do the things they know they're supposed to do. And so you can train the AI to do that and to step in when that is needed. Or the seller wants to ask but doesn't want to say it themselves, so we can tell the AI to say it. Right? So
sometimes don't you want that human nature? I mean, I would say that would be one weakness of AI is you may be in a negotiation and they're going to offer you a public case study. and you know it's a new market, there's variables that that aren't sort of part of the logical framework of a deal.
Yep.
That are sort of, ahead of it. And I think what's really important is that those things are captured. The fact that you told me that you could back channel information, shut up AI person. I think it's really key, because I do think that there are some nuances of culture of whatever you have that aren't going to be represented in the AI bot.
Yeah, our AIs aren't to the point. I think what Ori's building and what we're trying to build towards is the AI can have the emotional intelligence to do what humans do. And we're not at AGI yet, right? So she's not able to do those relationship things yet. But what she can do is she can provide all of the information in the conversation and give you all the case studies that are relevant to that conversation, do the ROI calculator, do the deep dive on the technical, and then let the seller still be there and drive the conversation from the relationship perspective. The seller is still in control, and we're not trying to take control away. We're trying to make them their best selves, right? Their A+ selves. Let's give them all the tools so they don't have to go do that research, and they know they just have that. They have their best sales engineer on every call, right? If I had my best SE on every call, what would my deals look like? Well, I don't have to get back to somebody. And I can really answer with the right answers. That's the ultimate goal.
Bryce,
And I know you have some. Sorry, Ori, go ahead.
Bryce, quickly, my take on this. I think it's something very common, and it's interesting, where a client, you've been able to show enough value so that the client wants to start, prospect wants to start, but they ask for a free trial of some sort. And I think it might be useful if you think about like 3 factors as thresholds, and how far, and did you reach those thresholds? First would be, did you really cement the enough perceived authority from your end? And also, did you cement enough scarcity of the product and urgency? Now, sometimes if one of these factors or all of them are not taken to the right threshold, you get these situations. But there is value in what you're selling, and that's clear.
Yep. Yeah. Classic Chris Voss here in AI form.
Chris Voss has his own take on this, but these are like biological things.
Yeah. Yeah. Structurally.
Dan, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think your initial prompt was about the role of multi-threading, right? Around getting in front of a wider range of folks in a buying committee. And negotiations really like a 2-part process. There's negotiating with the actual like commercial folks, the folks that you're actually going to do the deal with, they're going to use the products, etc. And then you get passed to Bowser, which you spent time as Bowser, the procurement organization. And we need to get as much leverage as possible before we get in front of procurement. And so multi-threading is a really important part of doing that. And one of my favorite examples of combining AI techniques is the use of personality AI or predictive analytics in predicting someone's DISC profile and a large language model. Because the DISC assessments, if anyone's not familiar with DISC, it's a emotional intelligence methodology. Think like Myers-Briggs. But what makes DISC different is that it's a methodology meant to help interpersonal communication across personality types. I'm a personality and you're a personality, and there are different things about the way I need to communicate with you to make my message resonate with you. And so that's a concept that existed before AI, but we see a lot of vendors that use predictive analytics to try to guess somebody's DISC profile based on a variety of factors, namely their LinkedIn profile. And so I can combine my business case hypothesis that I've been working with my champion on. And if I've got 3 different stakeholders, I've got InfoSec, I've got another exec stakeholder that's going to benefit from this, I've got the CFO that I need to talk to, I can take my core value proposition, that core story that I'm trying to tell, and collaborate with personality AI to try to tell that story in a way that that person's going to hear better. And this was always something that, one of the myriad things that folks have tried to beat over the heads of reps for years. Hey, get better at this, get better at that. And, it's unrealistic. It always has been unrealistic. But with the large language models plus personality AI, it's actually very realistic now to say, how can I tell this story in a way that Amanda is going to want to hear, that Karen's going to want to hear? And I think that's it's super valuable, not because of it guarantees results, but because it gives me very actionable ideas for how to communicate with these individuals to gather answers to the questions that I need, to gather buy-in, so that when I am selected as the vendor of choice and I'm passed to Bowser or procurement, I have far more leverage than I may have had before. And I think that's where I'm excited about the combinations of that tech to make that kind of stuff possible.
I love that. Also, imagine if you could pick who your seller is. As the buyer, they pick not only the personality AI is choosing how to engage with somebody, but you get to pick as a buyer who you're talking to, right? Like that's cultural, like that resonates with how you want to be sold to. It's a new world that we're putting in the control of the hands of the buyer versus it just being the experience that we can offer because we have limitations today.
Amanda and Dan, I used to share your view on personality AI, and we actually went ahead and did a lot of experience with it. And my current opinion about this is that I don't know. I'm not a big believer in personality anymore. We see very different behaviors by the same people, and usually it has the biggest difference that we were able to kind of infer is that it's based on the social status gap between person X and person Y. So even if a person has some tendencies, like we did a lot of experiments with DISC and Ocean, Ocean model.
Big Five, yes.
Big Five, exactly. We didn't see that these things are very good at predicting behavior at all, but the social status gap was extremely great at predicting. So I have kind of I'm not sure about personality anymore.
Yeah, Karen, I'm curious because your solution works with direct customer engagement, whether you find your experiences more like Ori's or more like what Amanda and Dan were describing.
Probably I'm more on the Amanda and Dan side. I do think that, Ori, that there's some evolution to be had here. And Amanda mentioned, she basically, came out with that sort of, wait, we're not there yet. I do think that it's learnable behavior, right? And it's learnable through repetition, and it's learnable through understanding sort of the underlying nature of what is cause and effect, right? And I think that as these models gain the maturity and sort of get more sophisticated, I think you're going to see that gap that absolutely exists today erase over time.
Darren, if you pitch to Warren Buffett versus you pitching to the cleaning lady that comes to your office, the two people will think you have a whole different personality.
And I would probably be very situational, and I would alter my pitch for those two different audiences. So I don't know if it's apples to apples.
Interesting.
I would say too, I think it depends on the industry, and specifically talking about my industry, and I'm going to narrow in on multifamily specifically. NAA, the National Apartment Association, did an analysis, and they said that 70% of renters still prefer to speak with a person whenever they're touring a unit. Well, not touring specifically, but whenever they're talking about the leasing process. So 70% of prospective renters want to speak to a human. I know that there is the potential to have an AI, and there are companies out there that have AI leasing agents as chatbots, but still so many people want to speak to a person. So what we've done, my company at Grace Hill, we actually provide training and policies, and within those policies, we have tons of information on what the process should look like for that company in terms of how that renewal process or that leasing process should work. And it operates, we have a Gracie chatbot, which is that co-pilot, so that a leasing agent at a multifamily property can quickly look up, like if there's a question about amenities, when does the swimming pool open, or any of those types of questions that may come up whenever a prospect is thinking about renting an apartment complex. It just helps that negotiation go a lot smoother versus, again, just most renters don't want to speak to a chatbot. They want to speak to a person.
But there's a
how are they
chatbot,
gonna
and
even
then
know, right?
Yeah.
How are they going to even know eventually? You know, we
Right.
actually, when we get on a Zoom call, we make a joke in our staff meetings. We're like, all right, which one of you are bots? You know, because I think eventually, you know, hopefully, you know, I even put snarky CMO. I created my own bot, you know, just to sort of answer stuff. Eventually, I think that distinction is going to be very easily erased.
correct.
It will be, but at the same time, there's that lack of authenticity, where I think we'll have that verified check. Is this person a human or not? And if you're talking about your home, you typically want to know if something goes wrong with your home, that there will be someone there to fix it, to fix that potential issue. So I'm all for AI in different aspects of the leasing process, but I think in this one specifically, at least based off of surveyed renters, that's what we're hearing. It may be different to other specific industries, but that's how we're seeing it in my industry.
But I think
Bryce, you had
surveyed
some-
renters haven't experienced it yet, right? Like they haven't experienced, we're not there yet. Like I think just a few technologies are starting to come out and have these more human-like experiences. And if you can give the buyer a better experience, like a more trustworthy answer, because I love it when people ask me, will your AI hallucinate? And then my question back to them is, do your sales reps hallucinate? Right? So, you know, yes, it has to be 10 times better than a person. And when it can supersede what the person's answers can give, and it's more reliable and more relatable and really understands who they're talking to, that's when they're going to flip and say, oh no, I'd rather talk to the AI than a human. But we haven't seen that yet. So they don't know what's not possible.
Hey, Bryce, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, just to back up just a little bit, it's more of a question than thoughts, but you know, within, you mentioned earlier about the complex buyer groups and what their different roles are within a buying group. And so it's more of a question as to, you know, how can we curate and quickly organize by persona within the buyer group? So I'm not going to like DISC or something like that, but maybe even position objectives. And what makes it really hard these days for the human side is there's so many different titles that could mean a million different things now. It's just like a title explosion, right? So, but when you have an active deal going through and you've identified the economic buyer, you've identified the influencer, yeah, those are big labels, but what's their role in this? What's their role going to be in the solution or the decision-making process? And this is where we see things get kind of complex, because if some of that buying group isn't connecting, they're not in alignment as you're going along, then it can be a gotcha at the end of the sales process. So wondering if there's ways to augment that. Very curious about that. Because as we examine lost deals, that's a lot of times where things happen. You think things are trucking really well. All of a sudden there's this person in the periphery that was quiet, but they're not in alignment. And now we're starting over again.
Yes. Is there any way to figure out that hidden sales cycle with what we have in AI so far? I'm curious. Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of thoughts here. I'm sure Dan has some thoughts on the framework side, but I was also curious, Ori, if there's anything you could find out from the emotional side, not necessarily to figure out who that hidden person is, but even to figure out if there's something that you're missing in the standard conversation.
Yeah, I think so. There's something we developed called carbon logic, and the word carbon stems from, you know, CC stands for carbon copy. So we just took the name, and essentially, if you really tune into the patterns of participation, let's say even in an email thread, you can find out a lot of stuff. For example, let's say you reach out to a Fortune 500 CEO directly because you know him somehow, him or her, and you ping Jimmy. And then Jimmy loops in, I don't know, his assistant. And then the assistant follows up with you, but then loops the CEO out. This has been a power move, okay? So we track that. So right now, we can know that you've been demoted in a very, very subtle way. The participation and taking people, looping in and out, has some meaning, and we can kind of infer some of the dynamics that happen in the intra-group kind of area. But I think it's limited to that at that point. This can also happen, by the way, in Zoom calls.
Mhm.
So I do think it's worth kind of pointing out that there's another side of the negotiation process, which is, you know, the negotiating terms and contract conditions with procurement. This is I love to use the Bowser metaphor here, because it does kind of represent the sentiment that I think many a sales rep may feel towards the procurement process. And I work with a lot of procurement folks at Gartner. And there are some interesting examples of, on this procurement side, what the sales organization isn't necessarily seeing. If you want to peek around the corner, is that procurement teams are investing in AI to help with the negotiation process. Therefore, you are going up against a machine customer. And there's actually a pretty well published story about this, about Walmart investing in, on the procurement side, a chatbot for suppliers. And the success that they've had, they've seen 3% savings on negotiations with suppliers. And the story is not about investing in their case, negotiating with the resale product vendors, but more like, you know, operations vendors, companies that help them run the business. That includes hardware, software, as well as, you know, services provided. And they had a very intensive process of conditioning the bot with guidance on what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. But the key thing that they did was they got the suppliers that they work with to buy in advance, to say, hey, look, are you cool to participate in this, negotiating with our AI chatbot? And the ones that opted in are, you know, that's important to acknowledge, because not, you know, we don't necessarily live in an opted in world, but they did. And what I think that the insight from this is that it created a lot of efficiency and time savings for everybody involved. And there was a very, you know, the cost savings were, I mean, for a company like Walmart, 3% is a lot. We don't know the exact dollar figure, but you know, what is that going to do for sales planning and commissions when I might be going up against an AI bot? I think that that's a question that more complex enterprise sales reps are going to need to have a playbook for. Is the answer my bot versus your bot, or is the answer, you know, people interacting with it? And what was interesting is that 64% of their contracts, they were actually able to reach an agreement just with the chatbot. Their goal was 20% of agreements. And the suppliers actually found that they liked the experience because of two things. One, it was very much so acknowledging that it was going to accept counter offers. It wasn't a like authoritarian bot. And the second was, it gave them time to think about their counter offers, because a lot of the times negotiations happen in real time. You don't have the opportunity to, I mean, we've all seen the, you know, the movies, if anyone's, or the TV shows, if you watched, you know, Harvey Specter, the greatest closer in the city, you know, negotiations happen often in real time, and giving them time to put a counter offer together was something that they valued quite a bit too. So I don't have an insight to say here's what we should do yet, other than this is coming, and I think that's going to be actually even more of a disruption to sales than necessarily the AI I use to negotiate in the short term.
Great. So we've talked a lot about some of the benefits, some of the tactics that are involved in bringing in AI for various aspects of sales, various aspects of negotiations, contracts, terms, stakeholders. But I think one of the big questions that really comes up at the end of the day is understanding that all these things are here. How do you actually get started in using AI in an effective fashion for sales and negotiations? Right now, the most common tactic seems to be spray and pray. Just kind of throw out a lot of technologies to everybody and hope that somebody figures out the right way to use it. But is there a more sophisticated or structured way to actually make AI work, as especially for something as complex and nuanced as figuring out how to get to a sale or how to get to a more nuanced contract.
I think that if deal closing is like a war, I'm sorry for the comparison, but it's a long process with a lot of small wins or losses, then I think that the patchy approach can be useful. Just like, I don't know, the US Navy or Army will use specific technology for one of its, I don't know, subdivisions. You can use AI in several areas of you. Of course, there's big engines, but several areas of your flow, and have a lot of small wins that will accumulate into more efficiency, more bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with Ori on that. I think that it's about the small wins. It's about the small places that you can insert the technology where you feel comfortable that it works. I think, we're still humans. We're still involved. We still need to be involved. We'll see where that goes. But for now, these tools are a great help.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, the way we say this internally all the time is that, there are so many incredibly powerful tools out there, but as the crafts people, we have to make sure we don't forget about what we're trying to build. And so we take a very iterative approach on adopting any type of new technology, but where we say, do we have the fundamentals very strong? We can do this longhand. Now let's understand specifically how it's going to augment that, and we feel confident in the outcome, and then we'll pilot it internally and then progress it towards standard operating procedure. But I agree with you that I think just adopting based upon literally emotion or promise is pretty dangerous. With that said, the other side of it is you've got to be out in front of this stuff if you're a sales org. And if you're working with tools from the 1800s and you're trying to build things in the modern age, you're going to get swallowed, right? So I think it's a balance of those two things.
Yeah, we have some frameworks that we guide our clients on in regards to how to think about sizing up the value of investments. And we try to keep it simple, where you've got kind of 3 different ways to categorize an investment: a defend, extend, or append. Defend is more task specific. You're just creating some efficiency. I think Amanda talked quite a bit about that earlier. Extend is where you're trying to take an existing process. This is, I think, where Bryce's comments come in, and you want to use AI to make your approach to that process differentiated in some way. And so when you think about, and then append is more at the company level, where you're thinking about creating a new product, using it to enter a new market, or you're completely upending a core process that you have. Negotiating or introducing a chatbot for negotiating would be an upend use case. But investing in AI for business case writing would be an extend use case, because you want the value of your business case to be differentiated against a competitor that's at a similar stage in the deal. And I think many of the capabilities that are available today that have come out over the last 18 months are more defend use cases. And frankly, that's just because the whole industry's been trying to figure out what to do with large language models, how to put it into the product, how to sell it, how to implement it. And we've got some really, if those of you know about Gartner's hype cycle, generative AI is at the top of the trough of disillusionment, like a skateboarder stepping into an X Games mega ramp, right? Like, so I think that for clients, looking at your low-hanging fruit defend opportunities, more specifically, like within the systems you're already working with to make your life a little bit better. It's not a compelling value proposition, but it's more about getting the organization more comfortable working with AI. That's a more strategic way to think about that. And then look for your extend use cases that are based on, like what Bryce said, hey, we're really good at this. How can AI make us be differentiated as a sales team through this particular process. And I think doing research to come up with a point of view at the top of the sales process and writing business cases at the bottom of the sales process are two very smart ways to think about that.
Yes,
Can I just share one thing from Mike Maples at with Floodgate is one of my most respected VCs that I really look to for advice when building a company. And he talks about the concept of backcasting, of looking to the future. Like the day that, you know, Uber came and said they were going to have, everybody's going to get in a car. Everyone's like, no way, we're not getting in a car, right? Like I'm not getting in some stranger's car. And I think we're in the same place here with AI. It's like, no way I'm going to have the AI lead or be a part of my sales process. But the truth is, and it's people rejecting the idea, which says that there's actually something here and it goes outside of the bounds of where we are today. We have to think to the future. And then I totally agree. It starts small, but bring in solutions that can take you to the future, not just the point solutions that are iterative changes, because I believe the big incumbent companies will do those point solutions. And it's what does the future look like for this company and how can we stay ahead and be in that game and be in that Uber ride?
Terrific. Final question that I have across the board for everyone is simply wondering, at the end of the day, as we're looking at AI from a negotiations perspective, where do you see AI really affecting negotiations for the rest of the decade from a practical perspective? Do you see this as something that can take over the negotiations process? Do you see it as an assistant? Do you see it as perhaps a red herring because people are going to really be doing this face-to-face at the end of the day?
I think it really depends on whether Jen is right or Amanda. Meaning, is this gonna become, AI is gonna keep being an empowerment tool for humans? I hope so too. Or is it gonna replace humans? And that will dictate all the rest, in my opinion.
I think it will absolutely replace humans in many facets. And I'm not shying away from that. I think people don't want to say that, but it'll also open up a lot of opportunities for humans too, to go back to being their empathetic and relational selves and let AI do all of the tasks and the negotiating and the hard work in the deal cycle. And I think we have to not be afraid of technology. I think a lot of people are afraid, and that's why, they lead with fear. I like to say, let's lead with love and embrace this and bring this in and make us our best selves and our best companies.
So
I agree.
I believe I'm super sort of pro AI. I'm super pro technology. I still see it as an assist, and part of that's selfish. I love to do what I do, and to sort of have this kind of foresight that eventually I will be replaced in that kind of role just doesn't seem sort of like a good thing to me. But very pro AI, but definitely see it as an assist.
I want to agree with Karen on that. And I agree with you, Amanda, in that AI is going to automate so many things in our lives that we can't even predict right now. But I think the beauty of that is that we get to select what it automates. And we get to say, hey, we enjoy doing this type of job, especially if it's a job that has some level of complexity to it when we're dealing with human to human. So I'm on the side of we get to choose. And me personally, I'm with Karen. I think this is a fun part of the job that we can keep around. But that's my 2 cents. I'm curious to hear. I know we still have to hear from Bryce and Dan,
Bryce,
right? Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. I know we're almost at time, but I agree that I think it's a power assist. I think the skill of the craftsperson, to keep that analogy going, is going to be what differentiates sales organizations. What tools should I use for this case? Am I really good at using them? And did I architect the right structure in the first place? Because if I didn't, the tools don't matter. They just make a bigger mess faster. So we're very excited about utilizing, we're using a lot of it, but I think that's going to be what separates the high performance sales teams from the ones who get left behind.
I'll be fast. As long as the gears of capitalism are controlling the speed of AI, then we will see probably some segmentation and industry-based approaches. So deals of a certain size will be my AI bot versus your AI bot. Deals of another certain size will probably be AI assist versus your AI assist. And then deals, very complex deals will stay, people-based. But the X factor is regulation.
Great. And with that, thank you so much for a fantastic conversation over the past hour. It's been my pleasure to join all of you. And thank you to all of you listening.